This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this podcast, the Party Loaded Show, for the 14th. I'm going to say 14th of November. It is Wednesday night. This, of course, is your weekly hit of everything great in the world of video games. Joined by, most of the party tonight. We're doing pretty well. We've got me, for a start. My name's Luke Retallick. I'm partying up tonight with Jam. Jump in, Jam.
Hey.
Yeah, welcome back.
I'm back.
You're back.
I only have mild plague still.
No, that's it. We'll shake the rest of it out of you tonight. It's actually a really warm night tonight. I'm sitting here sweating at the moment. It's getting summertime for us.
I really needed to know that. Yeah.
Warm weather will do your lungs all the good in the world. So, Matt, hello. What's going on?
Hello. Not a whole lot. Let me just... I'll be half paying attention. I'm playing Fallout 76 right now.
Oh, yeah, of course you are. Of course you are. Christian Paulson-Brown, welcome to the show.
Hello,
welcome.
friends.
What's going on?
Hello, friend.
I'm gonna take a punt here and assume that you're one of the sensible people that didn't stay up till like 2 to 3 a.m. last night playing a certain new game. Christian, you did something
That would be correct. I was sleeping.
Oh,
Good
my
move.
God. Yeah. It's been an interesting last 24 hours anyway. And Matt, how are you feeling actually? Because you and I think, were the last to drop last night. And
You guys are mad.
yeah, but that's our usual MO anyway. So I think we're probably fairly used to that.
I have not had a late night like that in quite a while, but I had a good time. So I'm not
How late
regretting
are we
it at all.
talking?
Well,
3:30 a.m.
Like
Oh.
absurd late.
wow.
Yeah.
I hit 10
that's
o'clock. I
respectable.
hit 10 p.m. and went, oh, God, I got to go to bed.
Yeah. That's impressive. I only lasted till like 2:40. Matt, you went for quite a long way after I did. So yeah. But anyway, we're already sort of towing into it anyway. So we should dive straight into our current gaming this week because there's been some fun stuff. Fallout 76 just launched, so we're out of the beta. We're out of the break everything early access. I don't know, forget the acronym already. It's done. We're in full game launch now. So game
Happy Reclamation Day, everybody.
Yeah. It's good. It brought back memories of everyone charging through the confetti at PAX, doing the whole vault opening thing in the clue queue, and that was cool. The launch happened. It was actually scheduled for our time zone to be happening at 9 p.m. in the evening. But somebody messed up in our favor. I feel like we just played Monopoly and it's like bank error in your favor. Collect 3 hours free game time. We were on just after 6 p.m., like 3 hours early. I think somebody just pressed the green button for every sort of time zone location in one hit, and we were off to the races. So, yeah, I don't know how that worked out, but I'm not complaining.
It was great.
Yeah. It was good. We all had a pretty good play session last night, and quite a long one today as well. So where's everyone sort of sitting on it at the moment? What have you been doing? Jam, let's hear from you first, because you haven't actually talked a lot of Fallout 76 yet, because we've been chatting it the last few weeks while you've not been here. So yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. It's everything I wanted. The second I found the radio station with the old-timey music, I was just home. What I've realised last night and today that I particularly enjoyed is witnessing the first impressions of our friends who jump in for the first time. When Mimo got on last night and I went to meet her outside the vault, and just watching her absorb all of the everything was awesome. And then Dave did it like an hour or so later, and it's just great. And then I haven't progressed too far in the storyline myself. I just started poodling around with them to see where they felt like going and found new things. And it's just doing it with friends, exploring the wasteland is superb. Yeah. I love it so much.
Now, I asked Matt this earlier, but I don't think any of us have actually hit the edge of the map yet, have we? We haven't progressed that far.
No.
No, interesting.
I've seen the river to the west. I don't know if you can technically cross it and go further.
Yeah, I got no idea. I suspect there's going to be things that look pretty deadly that are going to prevent you from wanting to travel too much further. Yeah.
Most likely.
I'm too weak to go most places at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been really enjoying it. Matt and I've been playing a fair bit today. Jam, you jumped on for a bit today as well. Matt, you've progressed through to what, level sort of 16, 17 now? 18? I don't know. What are you at?
No, I hit 21
Oh, Jesus.
today.
Okay.
Wow.
I hit 21 just by crafting.
Wow.
So, like, when I've been playing, I've not been going out of my way to try and grind out levels and everything like that. There were people running around when I was doing the beta that, a couple of days before the beta was over that were at, like, level 27. And you could see the strategy that they were basically just running through, shooting up everything and then moving on, like, not actually looting any of the bodies, just running through, killing stuff and moving to the next area to kill more stuff, basically.
Okay.
So I've been kind of taking it slow. Like, literally probably 2 hours of my afternoon was spent just looking for a new place to put down my camp and build a brand new house, even though it was only yesterday that I was like, wow, I really like my house and the area it's currently in. But then today I was like, I'm going to move and completely rebuild everything. It was doing leveling up. I noticed that there's actually perks for building. And I'm like, maybe I should have spec'd myself like that.
Oh.
But there are. It's like, I think it's under like intellect, I believe, something like that. It reduces the cost of constructing walls, and anything that you build inside your camp is like reduced cost. But I've kind of offset that by just being a pack mule, basically, with my huge amount of strength. So it's not exactly like I'm lacking for materials to build with. Yeah, like I'm really enjoying it, but I think my favorite reaction to it has actually been that of my girlfriend, because she is a West Virginia native, and so
schooling us on the correct pronunciation.
Yep. Appalachia. I can't remember which one it is.
The way I remember it is Appalachia, because it's like someone threw an apple at you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's actually
really
going to help me.
Yeah.
It's been really funny listening to her, because she's like, this isn't supposed to be here. And the way I've heard her describe it is like they've taken a whole bunch of landmarks from West Virginia. They've gone and thrown it into a jar. They've rattled it around and then poured it all out onto a map and said, that's West Virginia now.
In the future, bombs drop, all the land masses just, merge together into this new form. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Big shuffle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been really amusing. Like, there was this one area we walked through and she's like, go over to that yellow building. And I'm like, okay. And I go over there and she's like, oh my God, it is actually the museum. And she was like losing her shit that this distinctive yellow building was actually mirrored in reality. She's also made a couple of jokes about some of the main cities that we were going through, and she was like, wow, it's actually nicer than the present day one.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dear. That's concerning.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Like, I keep on describing it. It's Fallout 4 with friends.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the game is, and it's excellent for that reason. So...
I'm definitely at the point now where the strategy is starting to sink in a little bit in terms of being a bit more selective with my looting, and we're starting to hit the caps of some of our inventories as well, which has meant that you have to be a bit more careful about how much crap you pick up. So the strategy gets a little bit more intense then when you're just sort of, searching for slightly better quality items and weapons and things. But the core gameplay loop is super fun. The combat I found a little janky at first, but I've kind of gotten used to it. I think it's actually not as bad as my initial impression, and the game does feel smoother now than it did during the beta as well. I've noticed quite a bit. Yeah. So, yeah, it's good. So, I don't think any of us have seen a nuke yet, have we? None of us have seen. No.
No, but we were commenting on the fact that they added a whole bunch of creatures and everything that weren't in the beta.
Yeah. The creature count's definitely been increased from what I remember. So what's the most interesting thing you guys have seen? Like, if you had to pick one sort of sight or spectacle that really stuck in your mind for the last 24 hours, what would you say? Anything in particular?
Ooh. I went out to the water park and was running around out there. And when I first arrived, there were a couple of the big monsters native to West Virginia out there having a gigantic battle, which I just kind of sat back and watched after I popped around into each of them, so that when they all killed each other, I could just go and loot their bodies. But it was a rather spectacular fight to actually watch. It's really, really neat that all of these monsters that they've created will actually go out and fight each other. and I'm not talking even the super mutants. I'm actually talking their big named ones. Will actually go and fight each other. So that's really cool. I find that stuff's really neat.
I've been saved a bunch of times by monsters peeling off to attack each other instead of me. That's been real weird. Yeah, Jan, what about you?
My favorite thing so far is each time I went back to the vault to greet new friends, there were other players there role-playing as responders, and every time a new person popped out of the vault, they would drop supplies, weapons, and gear for them.
Oh.
Low-level stuff that they could equip. It was just the sweetest thing. Like these high-level 30-plus people would just pop by for a little bit, and if they see anyone come out, they'd be like, here, and they'll wave and they'll cheer, and then they'll go on their way. And I know it's not part of the gameplay per se, but it's part of the community, and that's why I'm loving this so much.
That's awesome.
Every person that I've encountered has been friendly. I've seen one person with a bounty on the head, but when I encountered them, they were just doing their thing, so I don't know how that came about.
It's remarkably friendly right now.
Yeah.
Compared to the beta, I haven't been attacked by anyone. I got shot by somebody, but they actually immediately started making apologetic, panicking emotes at me.
Oh god, it was a mistake.
Don't worry about it, it's okay. It's been surprisingly friendly. So we'll see if that sticks, though, because I like it right now.
And the bonus to that is having friends online. I'd split up with Dave because he was doing his, beginner learner quest line. I said, go learn how to do that stuff. I'll just go look at this town over here. And at one point, all of the monsters respawned in the town, and I started getting flooding, and these shots started ringing out, and I turn around, and he hadn't said anything because he'd been on mute. But there's Dave coming over the hill to back me up and start fighting off all of these ghouls. And it was just the coolest thing, because I'm so used to Fallout being a solo experience. And suddenly it was like, oh, my friend's here to help. This is awesome. And then we're running around trying to loot everything. Yeah. Really good stuff. I cannot wait to get back on.
Teaming up for the whole looting sort of exploring thing has been really great. But probably the coolest thing I saw, I was telling you guys about earlier today, I was running through one of the towns, and a couple of the giant mechanical drone helicopter spacecraft sort of flew overhead, and I thought, oh, that's a cool animation just to make it seem like there's still a war going on in the background. But then I realized, no, these are actually assets in game, and they're suddenly getting involved in a fight with a bunch of super mutants on the roof of one of these buildings, like the super mutants trying to just shoot up at them in the sky, and they managed to take one of them out. It came crashing down into the middle of one of the city streets, just exploded on fire. A whole bunch of a sort of liquid that had been on the fire on the ground between the streets caught on fire, and all of a sudden the city was just engulfed in this giant flame storm. I was just like, holy crap, I'm glad I wasn't standing there anymore. So yeah, it was pretty awesome a spectacle. It was very cool.
I think it's also worth saying how eerily beautiful the game is. Because you compare it to other Fallout games, and there's not a lot of wilderness in the other Fallout games. There's kind of just major cities separated by a lot of burned down trees, but out here, it's there's a whole lot of greenery. And earlier, I was exploring around to find a new place to put my camp, and I found this wooded area. There wasn't anything nearby. I think it was Christian that mentioned last week about Red Dead and the fact that you couldn't really get far enough away from civilization if you were just wandering the wilderness.
And I wish you hadn't said that either, because since you did, I've totally that's been on my mind the whole time I've been playing as well.
Yeah, because that's exactly what this was. I was just wandering around in the woods, listening to this running water, and there were Brahmin running around, and it was just weirdly beautiful out in the middle of nowhere. No signs of any sort of Fallout except for the two-headed cows. Yeah. It was really, really exceptionally pretty. So props to Bethesda for making that happen.
Yeah. Well,
I wanted to mention one thing about the look of the game, because I have installed it and I got out of the vault, and I think I'm level 4, so I've just basically started. But one thing I didn't like is there's very aggressive motion blur and depth of field in the game. It's very, and you can't turn it off in the settings. So I had to look up online, and cause surely, there are a bunch of people who don't like it as much as I do, and I had to create a custom ini file in the folder to turn off the depth of field and the motion blur, and it's a bit annoying that I had to do that, but I did manage to turn it off, and hopefully Bethesda doesn't see that and think it's a cheat or something. So
it's interesting because you can turn off depth of field in photo mode.
Yeah.
So
photo mode
the Switch is there.
The Switch is there, and yeah, like
Yeah.
with the INI file, I could do it, but without it, it's always on, and it still looks nice. But I prefer just the sort of clear vision all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it took me a while to get used to the depth of field because it is very, very aggressive.
Yeah. And one tiny little question: can you repair guns?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I went to a crafting bench and I could see that I could repair armor and create new guns, but I just couldn't see the option to repair my existing guns. I think I was just missing something.
Yeah,
The
it's
weapons
one of
bench
the many
lets you
options.
create, repair, modify weapons.
It must have just been in
So
a menu. I
it's
didn't
just
see.
a key. It's a different key to the craft key.
Thing
It's
you'll
under
learn-
the modify.
Thing you'll learn though, unless you've got like your absolute favoritist gun in the world, you more often than not will just discard a gun and use a new one when it sort of runs out of like juice, because
Durability.
the cost to repair them, particularly finding the adhesive, is really tricky sometimes. So yeah.
Okay, so yeah, better just to cycle through them.
Yeah, most of the time. But cycling through them is a natural part of the game too, because as you break guns down, you actually learn the recipes for some of the upgrades for them. So that's actually part of sort of leveling up your crafting repertoire, which is cool.
Cool.
So yeah.
I was discussing with the gang today, like weapons seem to drop in brackets. So I hit level 20 and I was starting to see combat rifles dropping. And I'm at that level now that I can actually use them. It seems like rocket launchers are at level 20 as well. But so every 5 levels you'll enter a new bracket and you'll see better weapons dropping. So once you hit level 5, you should see like 10mm pistols dropping, and those are substantially better than the pipe stuff. Unless you like your really heavy hitting headshots from a pipe revolver or something like that.
Or you've got perk cards that give you upgrades for pipe weapons, which can also help quite a bit. So yeah.
I've picked up some weapons already that are like above my level. Like I've picked up 10mm pistol and pump action shotgun and maybe one other thing, but I can't use them yet.
Yeah.
Nice.
But-
yeah. When you can, you'll enjoy it so much.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And one other thing with the look of the game too, I don't like it. It's locked at 60 frames a second, which is annoying because my monitor can go to 144. So apparently that's like a game engine thing where physics are tied to the frame rate and it just breaks things if it goes too high. But that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, some people were
because they had
mucking
to
around with
fix
the
that.
creation engine. Yeah, well, I was just about to say before I rudely interrupted him, where people were actually finding that the rate at which you could move was tied to the frame rate. So there was a few get-arounds with that they had to lock down on.
Right.
So, yeah. But, yeah, interesting. I mean, they'll continue to polish this stuff as they go. It's already infinitely better than it was early beta, which is good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw an update them saying that they are going to add push to talk because at the moment it's like all or nothing. So you got like so I hope that they add that soon because I really don't like always having my mic on. I noticed like my little speaker was coming up, but it was from my extremely loud keyboard, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, everybody that's near me just like turned it off. But then I just wish I could do push to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good though. They've mentioned a few things they're looking at in the immediate future, like faction-based PvP as well was talked about, which sounds quite interesting. Apparently, 5 factions exist in the game already. I haven't seen any of them though. To be fair, I've seen.
Yeah, you got an armor piece for one of them, Brotherhood of Steel.
That's true. I did.
Oh, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. But that's like an item of equipment. I don't know if there's any sort of... I mean, obviously there's not human NPCs. That wipes out a few of the options. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what references there are to that stuff in the game. Because some of them would be timeline dependent, I would guess.
Well, if there was the Legion from New Vegas, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
Well, I heard rumors that the Enclave will be there.
Okay. I can imagine that because that's a whole like tier of like weapons and armor that are surely going to be in the game. So it makes sense if they were there too.
Yeah.
My theory is that players will be establishing these factions and basically become the representatives for them. You still won't see human NPCs in there. It will just be player characters wearing the Brotherhood of Steel. You'll see other people running around with Brotherhood of Steel tags over their head or something like that and know that you're in the same faction. So
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, well, Fallout aside, there's a game that I've been wanting to hear Christian talk about for a few weeks, and now I think it's finally the time. So, Christian, tell us all about your opening experience with the Tetris Effect. What's going on?
Oh, man. Tetris Effect is such a fun and relaxing game, but also has the capacity to be very stressful. So basically, Tetris Effect is like a visual and kind of, what was the word I was going to use? Like transcendental Tetris experience, where it's on PS4 and PSVR, But while you're playing, it's just full of music and like visual effects, and there's like whales made of stars swirling around you, and there's dolphins and all different, there's heaps of different themes of stages, and the music is really nice, and the music is like procedurally generated with your actions. So as you turn the pieces and drop the pieces, it creates notes in the music, and as the speed of the Tetris game increases, the music transforms too, and it really like takes you on this journey. It's not just playing Tetris with like stuff happening in the background. You kind of get it all sort of works together in this package that's really beautiful and great to experience. And like I have played it in VR and without VR, and I think this is probably one of the questions you're going to ask me, Luke. It's totally worth playing without PSVR.
Is it?
Really?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. Like on just
I'm going to get it then.
You turn the lights down, turn the sound up, and just like you can still get that amazing experience just with the music and the visuals on your TV. You don't need the VR, but having the VR is still great to experience. But even myself, I'm kind of playing it 50-50. Like it is, it's great either way.
I guess if I purchase it for PlayStation, if I end up getting a VR at some point in the later future, I can always play it the same copy in VR. So yeah.
And it's not a full price game either. I think it's $29 on the PSN, so it's not like a huge investment. And it's quite fully featured too. It's not just like you play Tetris and that's it. There's a whole kind of called journey mode where there's this beautiful sort of map of the stars, and there's like a pathway that you follow along it. Kind of themes of levels are grouped into kind of clusters, and you'll play through like a cluster of levels. And then I'm up to like the very last one, which is like this kind of marathon experience, and it just, you have to really use all of the features of Tetris, which I wasn't really used to. So apparently, since the Game Boy Tetris, there's been a whole bunch of like extra features added that I didn't know about, like holding pieces. Have you guys heard of holding pieces?
Yeah, I've never used it though.
So it's like, say you get a T piece that's dropping down, and you don't, like, you can actually press L1 or R1, and then that will transform into the next piece. So that'll transform into whatever's coming up, and then you'll have that T piece in like reserve. And then any time later on, you can press the trigger again, and your current piece will transform back into that. So you can kind of shelve any shape and then bring it back later.
That's awesome.
So it's really handy with line pieces, because the line pieces are always the ones where you're like, oh, please give me a line. So you can get one and then just save it, and then you'll have it there when you actually need it. And I know that there's also like a pity timer in the pieces. Like you will cycle through each of the types of pieces, and then the longer you've gone without getting a line, the higher your odds of getting that piece are. So it's kind of a bit balanced in that way, that it's not going to completely screw you over with the RNG. And there's a new feature where there's a bar that fills up as you make lines. I can't remember what it's called. It's like I can't remember what it's called, but it's just like a meter that fills up. And anytime you can press R2 or L2, and then the game kind of like freezes, and you still get pieces, you still make lines, but the lines that you complete don't disappear, they just stay there. And so what you can do is you can get like a full Tetris of 4 lines, and then keep going and get 4 more lines, and then once the meter runs out, everything disappears at once. So you can stack up like 12 lines that you've cleared in one go, and then the timer just runs out and they just all like obliterate, and you get like a whole bunch of points. And I've seen people online that you can get like, they've got cool names for it, like a perfectress. If you get 16 lines, it's called a perfectress. And there's like a ultimatress as well, which is like the best one you can get. And it's just like cool little twists on plain old Tetris that make it a more enjoyable experience.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
What 2018, like, it just goes without saying how weird this year is when we're getting so excited about talking about a new Tetris game. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I want it.
I recommend anyone who has any fondness at all for Tetris, like, it's just the sort of relaxation that can happen with Tetris, or the focus, and also likes It's almost a rhythm game, I'd describe it. Jam, I know you're a fan of rhythm games. It's got that kind of feel to it. So, yeah, thumbs up from me.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Well, you gave me the answer I was hoping for, so that's made me a very happy man.
Yes.
Ditto.
Yeah. All right. Well, last week, Jam, we talked a whole lot of Red Dead without you. And we've all sort of played a little bit more of that this week to greater or lesser extents. So I guess we could touch base on where we're landing with that. So where are you at with the game, Jam? Since because we haven't actually talked to you at all about your progress. Are you enjoying it? What do you think?
Yeah. I love it. I immediately abandoned the main quest line as soon as I could.
Doesn't sound
like as soon as I got into chapter 2. And I don't think I've left chapter 2 yet. I do a main quest every now and then because they seem to be tied to some of the things you can unlock, but I don't yet know how to fish. So I'm assuming that's going to be revealed. Don't say anything, it's fine. But that's currently not available to me, so I've had to subside with like shooting the fish that I see, which is hilarious.
I've actually ridden over a couple of them. Yeah.
But the hunting, I just get lost hunting.
Yeah.
I see a creature, I see a new type of creature, and I just follow it into wherever it goes, and it's gorgeous. It's just stunning. I don't think I can really fault the game, although the bits that I enjoy, I've just been, subsuming myself in. So there's a lot I haven't experienced yet. And I haven't listened to your take on it yet. So update, in the last week, what was your opinion a week ago and how has it changed? Because I've not listened and I want to know without spoilers.
All right. I'll go first. I'll try and be as spoiler-free as I can. So the general feel that I had last week was that there was something missing from the game and that I was enjoying it a great deal, but like there was a few things that weren't landing for me, like particularly with the characters and the story. My experience this last week, because I've put a lot of time into Red Dead this week, and I'm up to probably around chapter 6 or 7, I think. I'd have to check. And that's a lot of content. Like, believe me, that's a lot of hours to get to that point. This is a long game. I am feeling a lot better about it. So I still have my reservations about Arthur Morgan as the main character. I think that, there's probably a lot of dropped balls, in my opinion, as to what they could have done with the main protagonist of a game like this. He definitely has his character and there is definitely development, but I just don't resonate with him as much as I think I would have with John Marsden if I had spent more time playing original Red Dead. But there is one character that I love to bits, and it's a lady by the name of Sadie Adler, and I won't say why, but she is fucking amazing. She's so fun to do stuff with. So she's one of the members of the camp that you sort of travel with, and I'm going to leave it at that because her journey with the rest of the characters is, I don't think everybody will agree with me. I think everybody will have their own favourites. This is more of a me thing than a game thing, but it's something about it just really connected with me. I think it was really fun. But yeah, like, I've been enjoying it a lot. I've spent a lot more time sort of mainlining the story and doing a lot of the side quests as opposed to just going off and exploring. But I have been doing all of the side content. Like I've been doing all of the white sort of question mark stranger encounters that have popped up, all of the sort of white mission encounters that have popped up in the different areas of the map. I've done all of those. But like, I think it feels like I'm getting close to the end, but my percentage progress bar is still sitting up at around high 60%. So I don't know.
Is that total percentage or story percentage?
Well, my question is whether that actually represents the story or whether that represents game completion overall.
There's both.
There's both. You can you can see both.
Okay, because I really didn't think it represented game completion overall. Because I looked through the journal entries for a lot of I forget the name for it, but it's all of the different sections you can go to where you see the different gangs you've encountered, the different animals you've encountered, all that sort of stuff. And like the numbers that I've got for most of those is way low. Like there's so much in this game that I haven't touched yet. So like I'm nowhere near done. Basically, I'll probably finish the story and spend like at least that amount of time again going through and collecting all the stuff that I've missed. So, but a lot of it's very hard to find unless you really go hunting for it. But there is quite a bit you sort of get introduced to as you go through the story as well. So, and on the fishing jam, I won't sort of tell you about when you start fishing, but I will say that I really enjoy the fishing mechanics. It's a really fun part of the game. So
good.
Yeah.
Good.
So
my favourite thing so far has been treasure maps.
Oh, yeah. No, I haven't even found one yet. So that's another good example.
Really?
Yeah. Haven't found
I've
some.
done a
amazing.
couple. They're good fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Christian, where have you sort of landed after last week's chat? What are you thinking?
I haven't played much. Like I'm still in chapter 3. I found like the first kind of big town and have been sort of messing around there. I spent a lot of time at the tailor buying myself some new clothes, looking very sharp. And I went to see a show at the theatre. That was quite nice. But my thoughts on the game are pretty much the same, which was that I love it. I think it's amazing. I love the look and feel of the game, even with its slowness and its steadiness. I think it's a game that forces you to stop and appreciate it, and they very intentionally don't want you to be able to skip through things and rush through things, and I appreciate that. I still have my minor quibbles about day-night cycle going too quickly and the not being able to get away from civilization enough, but I thoroughly love the game still.
Matt, what about you? Yeah. What are you thinking a week later?
I also haven't changed my opinion. And Jam, for reference, my opinion was, in a word, overrated. I still enjoy the game. Like, I am enjoying it, but it keeps on doing stuff that I'm like, why is that a thing? That's really dumb. But the moment that I went and changed how I treat the main character and how I feel like he should act was the moment my enjoyment of the game started improving. So rather than being like, I'm going to be this cowboy that's rejecting, all the bad things that I'm doing, I'm going to be a cowboy that is a good guy that keeps doing bad things. Yeah. Right? Because the game forces you to do bad things a lot. And I think I think the moment that it kind of dawned on me that was the way I was going to need to play it, rather than doing a full Paragon playthrough, was one of the early missions where, you end out doing some really nasty stuff.
Strawberry?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when I had the very same realization. I was like, well, I'm an asshole. Okay.
Yeah. So, I keep on riding through towns and everything, and people will say hello, and I say hello back, and I get karma for that. And that's
no, you
nice.
don't. You say howdy.
But yeah, my enjoyment of the game's improved when I kind of gave up on the idea of actually being entirely good, because the game just doesn't let you do that. Whereas, the frustrating thing about it is that I know for a fact that if I wanted to be entirely bad, I could just go and be entirely bad. Like, I could absolutely have that experience in the game as well. But the game makes it basically impossible to just be a good guy. And that's it's like frustrating. I think I mentioned on Twitter, like, I kind of just wish that they got rid of that whole karma system and just allowed it to tell a story about this character and who they were, rather than telling you to decide who they were and then punishing you for deciding wrongly. Like, that is really silly in my mind.
I actually agree with that. I think that they should have just actually dumped the karma system.
Yeah.
I think they just need to label it effectively. So on the white end of it, you have bastard. On the red end of it, you have utter bastard.
Exactly. This isn't the epitome of good on this side. This is just, you're a bit less of a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So people will treat you a bit nicer.
Mm-hmm.
Good on you.
I'm definitely I definitely haven't changed my opinion of it, but I am enjoying it more than I was previously.
Yeah.
I enjoy it more when I'm not doing the story missions, I will add. Like, the story missions I've kind of found lacking thus far, so.
It does get better. It gets a lot better. I was happy to discover that it improves greatly once you get sort of a bit more invested in the characters. So, because everybody gets their time to shine. Like, there's a few that stand out, of course, as there always is in like a Motley Crue sort of arrangement of that. But I actually find it's a little bit like playing through a season of like Game of Thrones. Like, when I used to read the Game of Thrones books long before the TV show was a thing, you do that thing where you sort of have your favorites and you skip ahead to their chapters. I find myself frequently trying to do that with this game. Like, I know, like,
how can you skip ahead?
That's blasphemy.
Yeah, it's tough to do too. Like, because often the missions are labeled with a particular character's name, and the mission ends up being nothing about that character. It's just them that initiates it. So so it's a bit.
My favorite mission so far, I don't know, you probably mentioned it last week, I'm not sure, the Lenny one.
Oh,
yes.
I don't think we actually talked about it. But yeah, this game has possibly the greatest drunk scene I've ever seen in a game. So
I recorded the whole thing. It's glorious. I loved it so much.
All right. Well, anyway, we really need to move on because we've got more stuff to talk about tonight than just Red Dead. So, diving into some news.
Now it's time to hear some gaming news. Time for some gaming news.
Now, I wanted to find an excuse to chat about Spider-Man really, really briefly tonight, for none other than to basically just say rest in peace, Stan Lee. That was, man, not the way I was expecting this week to go, to say the least.
No.
Yeah. So I think that it's really harrowing when one of your childhood legends finally passes. And man, I mean, how much of a part of our adult lives is Stan Lee actually ended up being as well? It's not just something from our childhoods. This the last decade especially. Holy moly, how much?
I was saying to friends, like, I really hope that the final cameo he gets is something a bit more impactful. And I had I've had in my head this idea for years of, you know, especially with the next Avengers seeming to be having a bit of time travel. I just love this idea of, you know, during the Battle of New York, Stan Lee goes over to Thor and is like, hey, you dropped this, and hands Mjolnir over to him. and then it's just kind of suggested that for years now, Thor's just been completely shaken because some random human on the street just totally picked up his hammer and handed it over.
That'd be awesome.
That would be so great.
No, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things they could do. I guess we'll find out. I would kind of like for the second Infinity War movie to be the final movie that he does the cameo in, just to sort of have the big send-off finale. But I don't know. Who knows? Who knows how that'll play out? But anyway, that aside, very, very sad news. But we do have some happier stuff to look forward to, which is more Spider-Man content for the actual sort of Insomniac game. So the next DLC episodes, episode 2, Turf Wars, the trailer has gone up for that, and the release date has finally been announced. So we're actually going to be getting that on November 20th. So that's coming up in a week. So there you go, Matt. You might want to get to the
more
first
stuff
one.
to play.
Yeah, exactly. Just, you know, pile it on. So Turf Wars is going to be all about a fairly notable gangster in Spideyverse by the name of Hammerhead. So you'll find out a whole bunch more about him, and the imagery that they've shown of him in the trailer looks very, very cool and pretty true to the character from some of the animated series as well, which I like. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. No Black Cat showing up in the trailer, but I wouldn't be surprised if she does, given the way the story went. But looking forward to that a great deal. So this morning, the big announcement happened. The categories and nominees for the 2018 Game Awards were finally announced. So this is the formerly of Spike TV, now hosted online primarily by Jeff Keighley, sort of running into I think this is their 5th year, if memory serves, 4th or 5th year, one of the two. This is a show that's been getting better and better every year. Like I really actually look forward to it because it's a lot of fun to watch, and it's certainly become a little bit more supported by the industry and a little bit less sort of cringe sponsored relationship heavy has gone on as well.
No more Dorito Pope.
No, exactly, yeah. Which, there's a long-running joke that Jeff's been kind of trying to shake from his early career based around all that. But they got some pretty good sponsors this year. I noticed that they've got Spotify sort of sponsoring some of their musical categories and, some other big names too. But it's good. But yeah, without going through every single one of the categories, I think we could probably just hit on a couple of the big ones. So the Game of the Year category is got 6 nominations this year. And they are Assassin's Creed Odyssey, we've got God of War, we've got Spider-Man, we've got Red Dead 2, of course, Monster Hunter World, and Celeste. So what did you guys think about that set of 6 for the running for the big one? Any comments or thoughts?
I think it's fine.
That's certainly 6 games.
Yeah.
What would you guys pick? From that list, what would you pick?
I couldn't. The games I've played, I've not played enough.
I think we should answer this question very carefully anyway and sort of say who we think will win as opposed to maybe who our favourites are, because we'll come to that next month. So,
I
think Spider-Man will win.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
I have to agree. This with Spider-Man. I haven't played God of War yet, so I can't pass judgment on that. Monster Hunter World's good, but I do think it'll be Spider-Man. I think it's the more consistently good game out of that stack.
Mm.
Though, mind you, Celeste as well, I that could be totally surprising to me. I haven't played Celeste yet, so.
Yeah, I don't think Celeste will win, but I'm stoked that it got into that group because it's a fantastic game. It's really, really good. I think that a lot of people will expect Red Dead to win, but I suspect that it won't. And I don't know. I think
I don't think it will. No way.
Yeah.
I think Spider-Man would win out over Red Dead.
Yeah. I think like Spider-Man, God of War, Red Dead are my like 3 most likely.
Yeah, I don't know. Assassin's Creed is a dark horse, perhaps, because that game's had a lot of positive buzz this year as well. So
not enough. Assassin's Creed still has a bit of a bad rep. Even after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I wonder if the recent Rockstar sort of controversy is going to sully the chances of Red Dead at all, because a lot of the people sort of doing the judging are professionals in the games industry who may or may not be influenced by that kind of stuff. So
very true.
Yeah, I am of the opinion, and this might be unpopular, but like judge the work, not the person. Like it's game of the year, it's not studio of the year. Right?
Yes, there is a category for that. I mean, best game direction, I think, is one of the categories. So best game direction.
Yeah, and I can totally say, disregarding everything about Rockstar Games, that Red Dead Redemption 2 is vastly inferior to Spider-Man.
Interesting. All right. What else we got? So I like to look at indie games. That's always an interesting one for us to check out. So this year we've got Best Independent Game. Celeste is in there as well. We got Dead Cells, Into the Breach, which Christian and I have played a bunch of. Matt, you've played that too, from what I understand.
I played a little bit. I haven't played much.
Okay. And a couple that I've heard a lot more about recently. We've got The Messenger and Return of the Obra Dinn, which I'm real keen to have a look at. So... that's 5 really good looking games from what I understand, so that's cool. Still got best VR AR game going on. They've still got the very confusing situation of best action game and then best action adventure game, which the mind boggles. It's interesting. But they've changed one of the categories. The trending gamer from previous years has now been renamed as content creator of the year, which I think is a much better way to spin that category. And realistically, it's still got what you consider to be some of the biggest names in trending gamers during the year. But I think there's a bigger focus on sort of YouTube creators and Twitch streamers and people who are actually building content rather than just being controversial for the sake of it. So that's good. That's positive at least.
I'm just going to say it right now, though, that's not, there's not really a competition there. There's only one of those people that became a household name. So
that is true.
Yeah.
Yes, if Ninja doesn't take that out,
I
I think
only
a lot of people will be
recognise one of
surprised.
those names.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, looking forward to seeing how that all shakes out. I'm sure the show will be good. It's going to be happening on December the 6th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So we'll be able to catch that heading into December, and we'll no doubt chat about it on the show again when that all sort of kicks off and runs through. So... now, we had a bit of a showcase last weekend as well of Microsoft's sort of latest offerings in this point of the year. So with Sony not holding their PSX event, Microsoft, whether this was planned or unplanned, sort of stepped into the breach, and they had a very similar style event showcasing a lot of the best of Xbox this year. And there was some interesting announcements made. I think they covered a bit of stuff that was pretty much expected. So, more on what was happening with Crackdown. I think, was expected. People were wondering whether that game was going to get swept under the rug for another few months or whether we were going to get a release date. So, but we do. We've got a release date, which I believe is the second week of February now. 14th rings a bell. I'll just check that in a sec. And Crackdown's apparently got a multiplayer sort of arena-style mode where people get to do like combat and destroy the city as they're trying to take each other out, which I got to say, I'm not a Crackdown fan necessarily, but what they showed of that mode looked like a lot of fun. So, was similar sort of madness that we've become used to. So,
I think my most exciting announcements out of that were the fact that Obsidian and In Exile are now Xbox Studios, Microsoft Studios.
Yeah,
like that. I adore the fact that two fairly well-known RPG makers have been picked up, because that bodes really well for the future of RPGs on Xbox and PC in general. Because like when you look at BioWare and the fact that there's not really any announcements about Dragon Age, Mass Effect is definitely in hibernation for God knows how long.
Oh, they bring it out once a year and on November 7th just to wring the last drops of blood out of it.
Hey, look, it's N7 Day. Let's celebrate Mass Effect by buying some merch that we still have in the warehouse.
Yeah.
No, I'm super excited about that. Like, congratulations to those studios as well. That's going to be really interesting. E3 next year, I am super looking forward to already because all of these people that Microsoft's purchasing, I'm expecting a shit ton of announcements.
Hopefully they're allowed to make the kind of games that they are renowned for making and aren't sort of bent to heel and making other games for Microsoft.
Maybe I'm misreading Microsoft right now, but given that they let Rare go out and make a game that wasn't just some throwaway thing for the Kinect, I think Microsoft's learning. So I'm really hoping that they keep on letting those studios do what they're good at and not what they want those studios to do, because we need another weird Kinect game or something.
Without going into a big sort of discussion on, I think Rare's a really interesting case in particular because that studio is very different to what it used to be. It's not quite the same, monster that produced some of the gems of the NES and SNES era. That's for sure. So,
but that's partially as a result of Microsoft's handling of it 10 years ago. So.
Possibly. Yeah. So they're still wringing a bit of life out of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So that's getting some love on Xbox Game Pass. So people will be able to pick that up for free on Game Pass around the same time that it's finally coming to PlayStation. Just as a side note as well. When I saw the trailer that they showed during the event last weekend, there's this one scene where a whole bunch of gunfire is going on, and then all of a sudden there's this desolate street with like a tumbleweed running across, and I was just like, yeah, that's pretty much how I think of PUBG right now. So that's perfect. I think the big winners out of that entire sort of slew of presentations were Xbox Game Pass and promise for the future in terms of the studio acquisitions. They're definitely getting all their ducks in a row and getting ready to do some big stuff in the future. So, the preso itself was really cool. Like in terms of the way that we would criticize like an E3 showcase and stage show presentation, and the way that different studios have their very cringeworthy moments and don't actually create a good show and make it very sort of staggered and poorly paced. This one they actually ran in Mexico, and the crowd was hyped. Like it actually looked like a lot of fun to be there. And I don't know if you ever get the chance to sort of the audience sit down and watch that 2-hour show. It's fun. It's actually a really fun 2-hour show. So regardless of how excited or impressed you are with Microsoft or Xbox, you sit down and watch it. It's actually a solid 2 hours of entertainment. So there you go. Yeah, so that is
Speaking
the Xbox
of
stuff.
2 hours of entertainment, the trailer dropped this week for the Detective Pikachu trailer movie. And the internet kind of exploded. Yeah. Because we got to see Detective Pikachu in the flesh and the fur and the weird semi-realistic looking Pokemon. And it's very strange, but also kind of cool.
Yeah. It looks like Blade Runner for kids.
Yes, that's a good
call.
Yeah. It's really good. Especially that there's that one shot of them like in the like a kind of hawker's market. That's like very Blade Runner. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got Ryan Reynolds as the voice of Pikachu, which was previously announced.
So that he can make a joke about it in Deadpool 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm stealing that joke from Twitter.
It wasn't
So true.
sadly. Danny DeVito was the crowd favorite for the voice of Pikachu, but he didn't get the role, so he went to Ryan Reynolds. Because if anyone in the original like 3DS game for Detective Pikachu, he has a very like deep man's voice, like a gruff detective. So
Kind of gravelly.
Yeah. So even though Ryan Reynolds doesn't sound like that, having like just a normal man's voice is in keeping with the game. It's not like in the original game he has like a cute voice, so that fits. And then it seems pretty I don't know, it almost made me think of a fan film is the kind of vibe I got from it, especially because like the lead actor seems to be he's not a big name. I don't know, it's gives me kind of fan film vibes, but with a bigger budget. But I'm cautiously optimistic, cautiously excited. So
I went from writing it off because I don't know the original, and I just thought it sounded absurd to, oh my God, I have to see this. I can't not see this. I'm so excited to see this.
Yeah.
The expressions on little Pikachu's face. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So fun side note.
smush him.
Do you guys remember the artist that was doing the rounds a few months back that was doing the drawings of the realistic Pokemon, the horrifyingly realistic ones? Apparently, he's actually working on this movie. Like, he's actually one of the creative consultants.
I saw that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I gotta say, like, the attention to detail on the Pokemon is incredibly good. Like, you can see that there's a lot of love in there. And I totally agree with what Christian said. Like, it looks like a fan film, but that actually gives me a lot of hope for it turning out really, really well. Because you can see that there's that love in there, right? Like, I was looking at this one post that a friend pointed out to me where people were nitpicking about the fact that, like, okay, Mr. Mime has hair. Like, why does he have these weird horn things? And somebody pointed out the Pokedex entry literally says that he doesn't have hair, he has these weird growths on his head, and the movie reflects that. Like, that shows so much care. That's amazing. Like, that fans missed that, but the people making the film did not. I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of Easter eggs in that trailer. A lot.
Heaps.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just posters in the background and just, tons of stuff.
Yeah, I was with you, Jam. Like, when I first heard that Ryan Reynolds, of all people, was going to be the voice of Pikachu in a detective Pikachu movie, I was like, this is the latest in a long line of bad ideas for video game adaptations to movies. This is just, this is going to be a failure to launch right from the get-go. After watching the trailer, I'm just like, holy crap, this could actually be the best one of these that we've seen. We'll see.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just wrote it off because it was a Pokemon movie.
Yeah.
I'm just not a Pokemon fan. Now I'm like, oh,
yep.
I need
It looks
I need it
like
so bad.
a movie that's grown up with its audience.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of the impression
Which
I
is
get.
awesome.
But it also does, like, embrace the absurdity of its own existence, because that's the whole, like, contrivance of the main character being the only one who can understand Pikachu. That, like, kind of leans into like the fact that it's meant to be bizarre and weird, like, in the story. So I think that helps it work together. So
Yeah. I think it's absolutely the right move as well, rather than just doing like a retelling of, Ash's journey from Red and Blue.
Thank God.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of do need to make one of the Pokemon the main character, because that's what people care about. They don't care about the humans as much. You need to make them front and center, and actually making them able to communicate is a very big part of that success formula, I think. So, yeah. So, all right. Well, last thing on the list for tonight, we've got a little bit of news coming out of Square Enix, which we're a little late to the party on this, but it's worth mentioning anyway. So, any fans of Final Fantasy, the Final Fantasy game director has actually resigned. Now, Christian, can you pronounce his name for me? Because I know I'm going to wreck this.
It's Hajime Tabata.
That sounds right.
That's
so
fine.
Tabata-san,
Yeah.
he's been directing some of the biggest Final Fantasy releases for the last few sort of generations of the game. I think he, he's been in the background for quite some time, but he was, principal director on a couple of the last ones. Final Fantasy 13, I believe he was heavily involved.
No, it was Tetsuya Nomura on 13.
Oh, okay.
Tabata's the first it's his first numbered Final Fantasy game.
Well, there you go. All right, so I stand corrected. But yeah, so he has resigned and basically taken with him all hope of the remaining DLC for Final Fantasy 15, with the exception of the one that I believe they've sort of gotten closest to completing work on, which is still going to be released. So the DLCs were going to be based on some of the main characters. So the ones based on... Arden is going to be the one that still hits in March, but the ones based on Aranea, Lunafreya, and Noctis have all been scrapped. So,
which sucks, because Aranea is like my favorite character.
And
she doesn't
really?
Get hers.
Yeah.
Arden is like the antagonist, so that'll be interesting. And then Lunafreya was like the love interest who got no screen time, so it would have been good to see more from her. But yeah.
So there you go. It's disappointing, but I mean, I kind of land on the side of Final Fantasy 15 for me was pretty forgettable. So I know I'm not necessarily going to find everyone agreeing with me on that, but it certainly is not one of the biggest highlights of that series for me, that's for sure. So yeah. I just
think it's surprising that the game got so much post-launch support in the first place, because it's not often that a game like that will I think it's been 3 years since it came out, at least 2. So yeah, I mean, this is going to happen eventually. It's a shame that they had to cancel announced like projects, but if they hadn't announced them ahead of time and had just stopped making content here, I think everyone would have accepted that.
Oh yeah, there's been heaps. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's almost like the Final Fantasy team has sort of turned around and said, what does it take to have an open world game in today's age of open world games? This is the base expectation that a lot of people have now for these sorts of games, that there needs to be subsequent content released after initial launch, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't stand up to the competition kind of thing. But Final Fantasy's never been like that, so yeah, it's an interesting situation. Anyway, well, that all sort of leads us fairly neatly into our main topic for tonight. So we were going to sit down and have a long overdue chat, sort of leading up to Christmas, where people are getting well into the season of purchasing a lot of video games, whether it's for themselves or for others as gifts or ways to spend the holiday time. And we want to have a chat about the cost of games today. So have a bit of a chat about where we think the cost actually lands at the moment in terms of whether it's enough or not enough. Has time changed to the point where games should cost more? Have we got good reasons why we think games should cost less? Where do we all land on that? So we're going to sort of support maybe the argument for more or less as we go through and touch on a few of the different areas. But when we talk about cost of games, Jan, what would you sort of kick the conversation off with? What do you think is one of the first things that springs to mind if we were going to have a chat about game cost?
Well, the need for the developers and publishers to cover expenses. I mean, that's why there is a cost in the first place. But depending on the game, it can be extraordinarily expensive to make some of these AAA video games, and that's the big end.
Yeah.
That's undeniable when you see things like the last couple of Tomb Raider games sell millions of copies, and then Square Enix says they're disasters just because of how expensive they've been to make.
Yeah, it's weird. And there was a recent thing just coming out of the earnings call from Activision, I think it was, talking about how they considered Destiny 2 Forsaken to not have met their expectations, whereas all the fans of Destiny 2 Forsaken out there, and there's a lot of them, are just going, this is the best Destiny's ever been at the moment. So what are you talking about? Yeah.
Because they say that Destiny 2's sales for Forsaken were not what they expected, but then it was pointed out later on in the call, I believe, that they were like the amount of concurrent users is excellent for it, and they're really satisfied with that. So I don't know what they were expecting. Like, they're expecting to make a whole bunch more sales than what they made, but not for people to stick around. Like, I don't know. That's strange to me.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, as a game, it was one of the first of its kind for being like a sci-fi shooter with a ongoing, persistent world when Destiny, the original Destiny launched. And, now they're in a climate where they're not the only, ship in the sea. There's a lot of others out there, trying to sort of get your attention as well. So, yeah, no longer the same climate, bit trickier. I don't know. It's a tricky one. There's a lot of conversation that I hear, sort of listening to a lot of different sort of media sources on the cost of games that constantly talk about, like in the US in particular, ever since the previous console cycle, sort of looking around the PS3, Xbox 360 era, where like it's almost like the pricing for the big AAA titles around that time have kind of been what's set in stone since then. Like it's not really budged from the US dollar sort of $60 AAA big release mark, and over here in Australia we sort of get that for around between $80 to $100 depending on what the title is and where you buy it as well. But it's that same kind of bracket, and it hasn't really shifted at all. Like, and a lot of the other console game sort of pricing hasn't really changed a lot either. Even Nintendo DS, like talking about a handheld console that's been around for a long, long time, new titles on DS are still being fairly consistently priced at around that sort of, $60, $70 bracket for us in Australia. And there isn't a huge amount of variation for that, which is like insane when you think about it, how long
Nintendo are famously stubborn when it comes to pricing. They're like, nope, this is how much the game costs. You're going to pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why hasn't pricing changed? Like, what do you guys think about that? Where do you land on whether it should?
People keep buying it.
Yeah.
People keep spending that amount.
Yeah, people keep spending that amount, but I think it's also, and this is going to be me getting into a bit more economics, like wages globally have stagnated for a very long time. So you can't really justify games costing more if people can't afford more than what they can already afford, right? Like, and
if disposable income's not going up, yeah.
Yeah, and so the thing is that games are just getting more and more expensive to make, and so the fact that they aren't actually going up in price, they've kind of offset that by doing all the microtransaction stuff, which people hate. Like 9 times out of 10, the microtransactions, people just loathe the fact that they exist. Even systems that I think do a fairly good job, like Destiny Silver. People hate the fact that system is in there, and that it's a system that the game relies upon. But clearly, Destiny needs that if Activision's disappointed in the sales that Forsaken made. Like it needs that system in there to make extra money.
That's a really good point. That even though the boxed price of games hasn't really changed, the average cost to a consumer has increased because people are paying. Optionally, but sometimes it feels less and less optional. You're paying more for extra content and for DLC. So, yeah, interesting.
And that's just speaking if you're a well-known brand name. Like if you're an indie, there's a total race to the bottom. Especially on mobile platforms. Like if you come out and your game's not free, then you're not going to get anybody playing it. And so you're relying on advertising or microtransactions a lot of the time to actually get people through the door. Otherwise, you need to be recognized. You need to get a whole bunch of media coverage on your title. And so, it is absolutely a race to the bottom. And Steam, in a big way, reinforces that with putting your game on sale without even telling you sometimes. So,
yeah, Steam's a weird situation.
And that just all of that means that devs and publishers have to balance and project. If you've got X numbers in the first 2 weeks at this price for your initial revenue, then tack on all of the games as a service, bits and pieces, you get overtime to supplement. And then down the track, when do we chuck it on sale for this amount to bring in Y number of gamers? Pitch it all on your expected targets and figure out, okay, this is our estimated revenue. Then, therefore, we're going to spend this much on the game here to try and make it worthy. Or is that back to front? I mean, if you're not an established franchise with money in the bank, it's just... it just sounds so difficult.
And there's a whole thing to be stated about the fact that, you can kind of tell that game prices need to go up in the fact that early access and Kickstarter have become so big for indies in particular. And even some like triple I indies and you have Psychonauts 2 getting funded via their platform, right? Like that's absolutely a game that should have been funded by a big publisher, but it just couldn't get funded by a big publisher. But for Kickstarter and early access to exist is basically for developers to get money in sooner because they will burn through their budget to develop the game that they've got. And they'll need that additional income to actually finish off the work that they had set out for themselves. And they can't get that additional money just by pushing the price higher. So they have to get the money in via getting people to buy it earlier. It's not great.
Yeah. I think that the other big thing to consider with the pricing having not really gone up with the cost of production for games is that these days a lot of the big games companies and publishers have been pushing the digital content model so heavily. Like digital distribution just changes the landscape a lot compared to the old retail model because selling games at retail is ridiculously expensive. You not only have to worry about packaging those games, physical media that goes with them, all the distribution and shipping costs. You've got retailers taking their own cut, and even the second-hand games market factors in quite a bit as well because when games are traded in and resold, that's a new copy of that game that's not being sold in its place. So that actually is an expense as well. Yeah. So. Yeah, it makes sense that a lot of these companies are pushing digital content so much, and it gives them a much easier sort of access to some of these add-on avenues with the games as a service models and DLC and all that kind of stuff too. And people aren't trading those games on after the fact either. Like digital content is pretty much one user only still, and I don't think that will ever change. People would like to see that change. I really don't think it ever will. I'm just going to say.
And yet it's also not categorically cheaper than physical copies because the publishers say, hey, if we release the digital copy for cheaper, then you can buy it in store. We'll lose our retailer support.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that despite that a digital copy should be cheaper, they tend to be more expensive for the consumer. Like a new release game, you'll be able to get it for $69 usually at JB Hi-Fi or something in the first week. It'll be $99 on the PSN store, or even the RRP will be more expensive retail than digital, even though the actual cost for the publisher is much more expensive for that retail copy. And I think, as Jam's saying, that a lot of that is because of relationships with retail partners. They still do rely on retail stores. The majority of sales are still retail, as far as I know. So until that balance truly shifts, much more than it has. I mean, it already is shifting. You see stores like EB branching out way more into selling merchandise and like pop vinyls and board games and stuff to supplement the drop in sales. But they still rely on physical copies. So
at least they're not being stubborn like Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Well, the thing to remember about all that as well is that JB, when they cut their price down to $69, they're making a loss. And the reason that they can do that is because they make more money on other stuff in their store. Like a few years back, the good guys used to actually stock games and game consoles, and they stopped doing it because it was such a massive loss for them to ever actually sell them. Because whenever they were price matching to a store like JB, it was a huge amount of money that they were losing, because the retailer's going and paying like $110, $120 to the publisher for those copies or whatever. Or less, sorry. So they're paying, like, if it's a AAA game that's selling for $100, they might pay $80 or something, or $90, and make a very small margin on the actual sale of it. But the moment they're price matching to a store like JB, where they can just justify making such a huge loss on their titles, like it pushes all the customers over to JB as far as actually buying physical copies of games. But that still doesn't prevent it when you go with Steam, because Steam still takes a huge cut of your sales as a game developer. So you still end out in that situation where it's like, well, I could go and print physical copies, which is expensive, and then sell it to an actual physical retailer, or I could go through Steam, which is also really expensive. And if you push up the price, that just means that Steam's still taking a substantial cut of that. You can't win no matter which way you really go about it. And I definitely think there's a push in the direction of doing digital, because typically it means that people will make more money off of it. But that's also why, and this kind of leads back to a conversation we had weeks ago, EA goes and has Origin as their platform, because that means there's no middleman taking a cut. It's all just money in their pocket.
Yeah, I think we all installed Fallout 76 through Bethesda launcher.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that does get back to our conversation a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, because that means they totally avoid that percentage that Steam would otherwise take if they released on that platform.
And yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm totally fine with it, because the Bethesda launcher, as it turns out, is actually not terrible. It's not bad.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But I think that the switch to digital it would be a lot more comfortable with it if Australia had more robust internet infrastructure and a NBN that wasn't absolutely gutted. So that's the sort of thing that throws a spanner in the works.
Yeah.
That carries the whole discussion over to the flip side of it too. What about the users? Gamers often have, well, in Australia, we have expensive internet fees. We tend to already be paying those. But there's platform subscriptions or game subscriptions that come along with some of these titles. If I'm playing Xbox but it's a multiplayer game, I need Xbox Live.
Yeah.
So for me, that cost has to be justified in the total cost of the game too. Along with all of the standard things you would expect. How replayable is the game? How long is it? On top of how enjoyable, like how do I value my time in a way that means that this expense can be justified to me? It's difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had people buying the Dark Room, and they were basically saying, yeah, the game's really good, but I can't justify paying $20 for it. And it's like, given the amount of money that we spent on developing that thing, and the fact that there's people that have put 8 hours into that game and still not finished it, like, what is the expectation of cost here, right? And this is where you have really cheap stuff on mobile that I think really skews people's expectations as to what they should be able to get for free.
Oh, it's just this stigma of mobile gaming. It still exists today. Yeah.
But I do think that like that you can't really. That's tragic that people say that they can't afford $20 to buy the dark room. But at the same time, you can't really blame the consumer for like valuing products. I'm not saying you are. Just broadly speaking, like it's the publishers and the sort of market forces that have created that environment, and studios just fall victim to it. But it's not the consumer's fault, I don't think.
Well, I mean,
I entirely agree.
With the
But it's interesting.
number of games out competing for people's attention at the moment, it's not just the monetary cost; it's the opportunity cost as well. Like people who spend $50 on one game
FOMO.
and not spending $50 on another game that they could otherwise be playing and enjoying. And the time obviously is a cost that we're completely skipping over as well, because that's probably a bigger cost for some of us than the monetary one. But you're basically choosing one thing over another. So
And on top of all of that, the individual's decision can be entirely subjective. It can be based on the most nonsensical thing, the reason why they don't want to spend X dollars. It's so difficult to know. Some people might be willing to spend the money just if they've got a particular voice actor in a game. That's what lets them go, yes, I'll spend $100 here because I love them. Discounting every other thing. Like, how do you even balance all of those factors?
Yeah, it's really, really difficult to do. Like having been on the end of trying to decide what pricing should be as a developer, it's also really challenging. Like, especially when you're in indie and you can actually define the price yourself to some extent. Like, how do you value your game? And basically what it comes down to a lot of the time is like, well, how many copies can we reliably sell? And even then, if you were basing your sales figures, what should our price tag be based upon what you can reliably sell later on? The price would be extremely high, because like a lot of these platforms just aren't reliable to sell on. Mobile has a lot of problem with visibility. Steam has a huge problem with visibility. You can go and sell on the Xbox Live Store or PSN and have problems with visibility. It's just all over the place. There's a lot of justifications there for developers to push their prices up, but they typically push them down because lower prices mean more sales, which means if we can get momentum, then maybe we can make up that fact that we didn't price ourselves higher. But it also leaves you in a situation where if you want to be realistic about your sales figures and everything, then you basically immediately are pricing yourself out of the market as a particular, no matter how you approach the situation.
Yeah. With the pricing evolution, one of the things I'm most interested to see over the next few years, particularly into the next console generation, is how this sort of Netflix-style subscription model evolves from here, like this cloud gaming that's going on with PlayStation Now and Xbox Game Pass and that kind of stuff. Because that's been probably one of the biggest changes in the scene that I've seen in the last 12 to 18 months. It's been very fascinating, like particularly Game Pass. Like, it's one of those things now where you really have to think about buying a game on a Microsoft platform. Do you want to shell out for the full release game cost, or should you subscribe to Game Pass and get it for free during the first few months anyway, and then whatever you want after that? It's I don't know. What are you going to say, Christian?
I think that's a kind of scary prospect, the streaming service or like the subscription service, because I think it creates environments where the developers aren't getting enough like revenue back per unit if they're kind of being diluted into just one game in a pool that you're subscribing to, and I think it could also risk encouraging like more microtransaction, like harder pushing on microtransactions too. So, undercutting the value of the individual game and ratcheting up the pressure to do post subscription purchases. So I think there's definitely some risks involved there.
Well, companies have definitely had a line drawn for them in recent times with regards to how much consumers are willing to put up with the add-on content and the loot boxes and that sort of thing. That was one of the biggest stories of 2017. That's for sure.
They'll always come up with sneaky new ways of doing it. It won't be loot boxes. It'll be something else.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But like, in terms of like the whole Netflix model, the thing to remember about it is that Netflix does actually fund production. And what we're not seeing in Game Pass yet is we're not seeing games funded by Game Pass. It's more like publishers making deals that we will release our game as part of Game Pass for this amount of time. And they can usually justify that as, we get more gamers in that will play it for a period of time and then maybe buy the full version afterwards. Like compared to Netflix, where, as I understand it, like you compare Netflix and Spotify, and artists on Spotify complain all the time that the revenue they get out of Spotify is tiny. And so I think that it would be a terrible idea for games to kind of lean into that sort of Netflix style model, because I've not heard about how much people make off of Netflix, but in terms of games doing it, I just couldn't see them ever being able to make enough. Like if we can't make enough money on $20 immediately up front, a share of $20 spread across 20 games for that month is probably not going to help us that much. Not unless the subscription base is huge like what Netflix has. So it's really hard to say. Plus, Microsoft probably isn't going out there up front in the same way Netflix is and say just like they aren't going out there and saying, we will give you this huge chunk of money for you to put yourself on our platform for a while, right? They probably aren't doing that. If they were actually funding a game, the day that we get a game that is exclusive to Game Pass will be super interesting to see how it performs. But I don't think it would work very well. Not for video games compared to movies or TV shows.
No, always having the option for people who don't want to get it on Game Pass. I mean, it's almost like having a game that is exclusively digital and not having, box copies in a store. Some games do that, but games that, are big really don't want to run that risk if they can avoid it. So, yeah.
I like the idea of streaming services for back catalogs.
Yeah.
So give me last gen's games in a Netflix style, but let me buy my new releases. That's how I want to do it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, there's a few Xbox games coming out next year that I'm sort of mildly interested in, but I probably wouldn't be likely to buy them outright, but I would consider playing them if I was able to do it as part of a subscription model. So, with maybe that as one of the tests of, a consumer similar to myself of those sort of tastes, maybe that is a good option for people who are sort of on the edge and still trying to decide if they want to engage or not. I don't know. And once you're in that ecosystem, then they've got room to move. But if they can't even get you there in the first place, then they're still not getting your money. So, yeah. I don't know. It's a weird one. I'm curious where each of you sort of land on pricing just before we wrap up. So is there a line that you would draw in terms of how much you're willing to pay for a really excellent game, either at the initial purchase or sort of after the fact with the add-on sales? Like Christian, for example, I know that you're not a big fan of DLC unless it's something a bit special. Do you have
That's right.
a kind of, particular take on it, or is it very subjective and case by case as you go?
It's very case by case. Yeah. But broadly speaking, I would say that I'm actually quite happy with the price of games at the moment. I think it's very easy to get good deals on games, and I don't feel like I'm ever forced to pay, an absurd amount for games. And even with like DLC and microtransactions, I opt out of a lot of it, and I don't feel like I'm missing out on like core experiences. I feel like that's just a decision I'm making, and sure, I may miss out on some enjoyable things here and there, but I get plenty of enjoyment out of my $70 and don't really feel like I'm missing out on too much by not getting DLC. So I hope that continues. I hope I don't get put into a position where games getting chopped in half or chopped into thirds and I'm having to really be forced to buy DLC. So
that's fair. Matt?
Yeah, like, speaking as a developer, I definitely think that indie games should be more expensive than they currently are. But I also totally understand, as a person that plays and buys video games myself, that's not likely or reasonable to expect. I think that, like, an indie game that takes, like, a couple of hours to play being around the same price as a movie ticket is actually pretty damn good value when you're talking about, like... Yeah. Okay, so I could go and see a movie for the next 2 hours, or I could buy this video game that's going to take me 4 hours to finish for the same price. Like, that's super good in terms of deal. And, that game's probably going to have cost much less than that movie to develop. So that's pretty good for the game developer in that respect. But I definitely think, indie games need to be more expensive. I think AAA is good as it is. It probably needs to be higher, but you can't really push it higher without, as we're saying, wages also should be higher than they currently are. So the moment we start seeing wages increase, then yeah, absolutely, games should become more expensive. But late stage capitalism's a bitch.
So true. Jam, do you have a limit, or are you happy to pay whatever feels right?
I think the big end of town is pretty spot on for me at the moment, based on how I value my time. And I'm one who tends to go, for the big games I'm keen on, day one digital purchase. So it's about $100 Australian.
Yeah.
Small end of town, there are definitely indie games I have played lately that I would have paid more for. But I think that's lucky me because I've been discerning in the ones I've selected. I'm sure there's a lot of garbage on there that doesn't deserve to be the cost that it is. And I think that just makes it so difficult. But also the sheer volume of entertainment that is available to me in this day and age means that if it crept up steadily, as opposed to what it has done, which has stayed pretty stagnant for a while, I don't think I'd be telling you the same thing because there would be so many things competing for my attention and my money that I'd find it much more difficult were it any higher at this stage.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think the big problem, like based on everything you're saying, and that it kind of occurs to me, is like the price isn't necessarily the issue. It's finding the game that's perfect for you out there right now that you're not aware of, right? Like it's that curation side of things. Like there's a game out there that you will absolutely love that you've not heard of or played, and the developer is struggling, right?
Absolutely.
So that curation end is probably the bigger problem, because those really, really good games that just haven't gotten the response they deserve should be making more sales, and they shouldn't be having to make those sales by cutting their price lower. And I don't think that's an issue for the AAA side of things, except in very rare occasions, like you look back at Psychonauts and what happened with it, right? Like it was absolutely one of those games that deserved more recognition than it got. But I think the market's very, very different from it was back then when that happened. So yeah, I think that is what it comes down to for me. Is like the price is probably okay, but the curation needs to improve so that developers can actually have sustainable businesses. So
yeah. No, I've only got a couple of rules that I tend to follow when it comes to my game purchases. One is that I don't buy season passes for anything. I will always buy additional content a la carte where possible, because I think it's important to sort of see what each is on its own merits, and a lot of it is scheduled for release long after the fact, and plans change quite a bit, as it turns out, with regards to the nature of that content. So, I mean, you only have to look at, many, many examples over recent years. You occasionally get a diamond in the rough, like the stuff that's going on at the moment with Spider-Man, but then, you get some ones that are pretty rough as well. I mean, even... initially The Division was probably a good example of this. They came good in the end with their DLC content, but their initial season pass had 3 expansions sort of listed for the space of, I think it was 12 months, and the time period that ended up sort of getting associated with that when they finally got it all out was much, much longer than what they initially sort of said. So, by then you've tended to move on to other things, and you're no longer sort of buying on the schedule that you wanted. So it changes the product offering in my mind in that sort of situation. So, yeah. And I don't pre-order games unless I'm absolutely certain I'm going to buy it, like no matter what the reviews say. Yeah, don't pre-order games.
Same.
Yeah, bad idea. Don't do it. All right. But cool. All right, well, price of games. I think, funnily enough, it seems like we all seem to think that not a lot should change at the moment. So there you go. A few things here and there. So Australian pricing hitting Steam in a couple of weeks, apparently. Like, it seems to be coming towards the end of November. The 21st was mentioned in a couple of articles. So will we finally get some relief to some of the discrepancies between the Australian dollar pricing and the US pricing? Watch this space. We'll find out. I've got no idea.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It's so obtuse on Steam right now when you're buying a game and you're like, hang on, how much is this actually going to cost me? And you have to look at your bank account after the fact to figure out how much it actually cost you.
Yep. Oh man, it's a good game. I'm just going to buy it anyway. They know it.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. Well, that has been a show. So thanks for hanging out and chatting stuff again, gang. Christian, if people want to find us and give us any feedback on the topics we've discussed tonight, what are the best ways for them to do that?
Well, they can send us an email to mail@partyloaded.com. They can drop a message on our Facebook page, Party Loaded, tweet at us @PartyLoadedShow. You may also occasionally be able to catch us streaming at twitch.tv/partyloaded, and you can find the episodes each week thrown up in audio form on youtube.com/channelendgame.
That's the one. And I would really like to do some Fallout 76 streaming over the next couple of weeks. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So.
Seems like a good
Hell
candidate.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Matt, are you still going to Hitman with me, or am I going to have to do that on my own? Is that going to be a thing?
I was literally just going to say, why the hell is Hitman 2 free for me on Steam right now?
Oh, is it? Really?
It's free for me on Steam right now, apparently.
What the hell?
I can just go and install it, so I'm going to do that.
Quietly opening up Steam.
Yeah. Nice work. All right. Well, if anyone is coming on in the next few days, you'll probably find a few of us in the Wasteland, and that could be a whole bunch of fun. So we'll come back and report on that again next week, see what sort of strange mutants and things we've encountered, see if I have any more possums that taste like bacon. More on that later. It's a whole other story. Christian, I'll tell you about that offline. It's hilarious. But
All right.
yeah. All right. Well, anyway, thanks everybody for listening tonight. We'll see you again next week. But for tonight, that's it. Good night.
Good night.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.